busy schedule tonight, a lot of stuff to talk about, so we're going to get started. Here's our map of Mission Grove and all the surrounding communities that we touch. It's about 70,000 people now, a good portion of the city. Canyon Crest, again, we thank them for letting us use the facility, so you can thank them by buying drinks at the bar or buying meals. It'll be open until 6:30. If you're not getting our emails, make sure you sign up with Lauren back in the back. He's the guy back there waving his arms. To become a member, it's only $12 a year to become a voting member. We encourage you to do that. It does cost us each month to put the meeting on. We have to buy new writers for the signs and so on. Meeting rules, we're going to respect one another. Raise your hand when you need to speak. We actually have places for mics where you can come up and ask a question, and we'll put mics on those. And email us if you have any questions afterwards. Tonight's program, we're going to have some general updates and news. Then we're going to have the District Attorney Canine Electronic Scent Detection Dog, Solo, and his faithful companion, Jason. Then we're going to talk about the Kmart apartment update and what's been going on with that. And then we're going to have our Sober Living Homes presentation with Michelle Sheehy's going to talk about that and everything about what's going on with the Sober Living situation. And we have a picture of Solo here on the table. So, general updates. We have a battery bucket here, and when we took our tour several weeks ago of the trash waste treatment thing, we actually, Riverside had a recent fire. One of the trash trucks caught on fire. They had to dump all the trash in the street, so it was burned because of a lithium battery. Could have been from a cell phone or anything, so you don't want to be putting lithium batteries in the trash. Yeah.
Yesterday, I was watching the news, they had somebody had like inside their house, and a dog was chewing on somebody's cell phone battery, and it caught on fire. The dog jumped, the thing fell in the dog bed, caught on fire, and burned the inside. The dog ran out the door, the doggy door, and the house, inside the house, almost burned all the way down.
So there you go. Don't give your dog lithium batteries. And have good to play with. So, also we brought a bucket. We'll bring it each time. So if you've got any batteries from the house, you can put them in, and then we'll make sure they get disposed of. There's going to be a bulk trash day at the Lincoln Yard on August 17th. And we've talked to them about getting a trash day up here for us, where you can take all your larger items and also shredding. Well, they'll have a shredding vehicle to do that. So we're talking about scheduling that and looking for a location for that in the future. 4 of our signs, you've all seen our metal signs that we have out with the riders in them. 4 of them disappeared. Not from this meeting, but from the last meeting, and they were all on Mission Grove between Canyon Crest and Alessandro. All 4 of them, from the elementary school all the way around to Canyon. We don't know who took them. If someone will bring them back, no questions asked. Just drop them off somewhere where one of us can get them, and no problem. But we lost 4 signs. Somebody either didn't like what we were doing or saying, or I have no idea. The Hayward fire, I think most of you are aware of that fire that occurred close by to us. It burned about 6 buildings, 6 houses, and about 500 plus acres. That fire, which shows us how dangerous brush fires are. Years ago in San Bernardino, I was near the Panorama fire when that hit and took out 300 homes in San Bernardino. So you got to be careful with the brush fires. Clean your brush if you live in a place where you've got that, and get it cleaned out. So we're going to bring up now the Riverside Police Department update with Lieutenant Merrill and LaShawn. So you're welcome to come up.
Hi, everybody. How's everyone doing? I just wanted to give you guys a quick update. I know there was some talk on some residential burglaries that were going on, so I just wanted to give you guys a quick update on that. Hopefully this will. Alright, cool. So I pulled some stats for you guys to show residential burglaries from June as well as from July. If you look at I broke it down per neighborhood and then a grand total. So in June we had 22, July we had 16 total residential burglaries. Fast forward to last week on Friday, some of our cop officers and our detectives were able to piece some of this together. Come to find out, it was actually a crew based out of San Diego that were doing a lot of these residential burglaries. They did several search warrants in San Diego County, Riverside County, and I believe LA County. Total, 8 out of the 9 suspects have been arrested. They've recovered about 15 stolen handguns, about 7 stolen vehicles, a ton of property, personal property, purses, jewelry, stuff like that, and as well as cash. So as of right now, San Diego is taking the lead on trying to help identify where this property came from. Hopefully we can tie it back to some certified locations. We were able to confirm 3 of the Orange Crest burglaries were part of this crew. Hopefully we can get more and get those charges filed here in Riverside County. That is all I have. Any questions for me? Very, very quick. No? All right, thank you guys.
Hi everybody, I'm LaShawn. I just wanted to announce we are recruiting and signing up for our next Citizens Academy. If you're not familiar with that, it's a 10-week course every Thursday, every week. You would learn something different about our police department. Several of you here have gone through that, some most recent. So if you're interested, we still do have some spaces. It is filling up quick. I do have some flyers here that I will leave here at the front. And if you're interested, you're just going to go ahead and sign up here on our website. And that's all I have. Thank you. They're every Thursday from 6 to 9. And the next session starts August 29th. And then also real quickly, I wanted to remind school does start next week. And so with that comes our traffic problems, our parking problems. We will be sending something out on social media through our websites regarding, be patient, and it might be new for some people, the traffic patterns of parking. So if you're living near a school, just gear up because we're geared up for that, and we're aware that we're going to be getting phone calls and complaints. So thank you.
Good advice. And Brian and I took that Citizens Academy. We graduated with magna cum laude. But we highly recommend it. It's a great academy to take.
Was it pass-fail?
Was it pass-fail? Oh no, it was very difficult. The exam was unbelievable. Only about 3 people passed. So, continuing on, July 22nd, we met with the city clerk and got the rundown on how recalls, initiatives, and referendums work within the city, how many signatures we need, the forms, and so on. She was very helpful and will help us if we decide to do that and do any recalls, initiatives, or referendums. Just to tell you the difference, referendums you can do right after the city council has made a decision on something, but you have to do it within a shorter period of time in order to reverse what they've done. An initiative would be something new that you're putting on the ballot that then would not reverse what's done, but could change something in the future. So we learned about all that, and we're going to be addressing that as we move forward. For a referendum or an initiative, you need about 16,000. For a recall, you need about 3,000, and that's in the ward of the city council member that you're trying to recall. And recalls are different now. It's now 2 elections. The first election is to decide whether you want to remove the person, and then if they get removed, then there's a second election on who will replace them, instead of the old way where it was all done in one. So now it's done 2 ways. So on July 22nd, we met with the city clerk. Today, we went to the governance processes committee meeting. They had a thing on redistricting, which we know took place a year or so ago, and now they're trying to figure out how they're going to handle all the people that got disenfranchised by the redistricting by being moved to another ward. And when do they get to vote in that ward or the old ward? And the question came up, if Ms. Cervantes gets elected in November to go to the assembly, then her ward comes open, and there'll be a special election. But the question is, do the old Ward 2 people get to vote, or do the new Ward people get to vote? Because technically you don't change hands until 26 because it's Ward 2. So that's all open for discussion, so they're trying to figure that one out. So, the RPU, the underground line, we've been pushing for that. The city council voted to do it overhead. But we did create a video, kind of a draft video that we'd like to show you. And we're looking to improve that and do a better one, but I thought it would be interesting to show you the video that we have done, which we put together basically using AI.
The Riverside Transmission Reliability Project. Towering overhead, those massive transmission lines may seem harmless, but they pose serious risks. First, the strong electromagnetic fields they generate have been linked to increased risks of childhood leukemia and other health issues for those living nearby. During severe weather events, down power lines pose a grave risk, capable of igniting catastrophic fires that can devastate communities and claim numerous lives. The tragic incidents in Paradise, California, and Maui, Hawaii, serve as sobering reminders of the destructive potential of these down lines. These lines also fragment natural habitats, disrupting wildlife and migration patterns. And let's not forget the visual blight they create, marring landscapes and impacting property values. While more expensive, burying these lines underground significantly reduces these risks, providing a safer, more reliable, and environmentally friendly solution. Advocate for the responsible undergrounding of transmission lines to protect your family, community, and the environment. The June 11th City Council meeting is the last chance for the City Council to reconsider the last motion to stop the working group on the transmission lines and make a new motion to allow further study of the option of undergrounding the lines without delaying or pausing the current project. Contact the City Council today. Use the link below and let the City Council know your thoughts. Don't regret not doing something to help your city.
Now, obviously, we created this before the June 11th meeting, but we're working on creating a new one to try to get them to change and rethink this whole undergrounding. And we're also going to take it to our state representatives and the governor's office because they're pitching the whole thing about doing things underground. So, we're going to try to get them on board. So, that was all done with AI, by the way. We use about 15 different AI, different systems nowadays, depending on what we're trying to do. We've learned about much of them. We're getting them down, and we'll keep adding to our group of AIs as we go. So, March JPA, the West Campus vote, as you know, was June 12th. There was like 500 people there. The vote for the warehouses got delayed. And then subsequent to that, the Gateway Aviation Center, which is to build an aviation piece on the end of the runway on the east side, southeast side. They had a meeting on June 18th and another public meeting on July 1st. We sent in responses to the EIR for that. About 150 people sent in about 843 questions or comments we were able to send in for that, for the cargo flights. And basically, they want to build a hangar and then increase the cargo flights that we're doing right now from 4,000 currently that are non-military up to 14,000, adding 10,000 more flights at about 34 a day coming and going. But there's the potential is it could go up to about 21,000 wait to talk to Solo. And his buddy Jason. Good evening. So I appreciate the introduction. Most of the time, when I'm introduced, it's only Sol, and no one ever recognizes me as the person who brought him there. So I appreciate that my name was actually said this time. So thank you. First off, for starters, my partner Joel Babelico, who we usually team up and do these types of presentations, isn't here unfortunately. He's actually back east in DC, presenting at a national conference to lawmakers on child exploitation. In partnership with OUR, which is the organization who purchased Solon. We'll talk about that here a little bit later. But maybe some of you have met Chewy in the past and know his handler, Bubba or Joel. Again, he sends his regards and says sorry that he couldn't make it. With that, so I'm an investigator with the District Attorney's Office. I'm currently assigned to the Riverside County Child Exploitation Team. As you can see, this is my partner, Canine Solo. He's just sitting here waiting to be fed. A little bit about the Child Exploitation Team and who we are. So we're a multi-agency task force comprised of many different state and federal partners. You'll be proud to know that we actually have a full-time Riverside PD detective assigned to our team. We have a Menifee PD detective, we have a Murrieta PD detective, and then you have 8 full-time DA investigators assigned to the team, as well as a full-time parole agent with Department of Corrections, as well as a Homeland Security special agent, and then 2 FBI agents. So in total, we have about 14 full-time members, and then we have about 4 what we call affiliate or part-time members. That's the city of Blythe, the city of Desert Hot Springs, and then the city of Beaumont, and actually within the next couple of weeks, we're going to get the city of Indio to actually sign on. And why I explain all that is because it's important to understand that what we deal with and the types of investigations that we investigate unfortunately span all across Riverside County, and the DA's office can't do it by themselves. And so we highly encourage, especially when we do these presentations, for people like yourselves to go out to city council members, to chiefs of police, to advocate for us and say, hey, look, why doesn't my city have an actual officer attached to the team when we know these types of crimes are occurring? Unfortunately, a lot of police departments and city leaders like to turn a blind eye to this because it's not a pretty type of investigation, and we'll explain that here shortly. So I mentioned who we are, but I want to talk about where we actually started. So in 2006, we were originally named the Sexual Assault Felony Enforcement Team. And all we did, or all our purpose at that time, was to monitor sex offenders. So when you were convicted of a sex crime in California, you had registered per Megan's law website. And at the time, it was strictly the local jurisdiction who was actually registering that person, but then the DA's office would actually kind of monitor them and go do routine checks and just make sure that that person is actually living at the location they claim to be living at. Fast forward in 2013, the same team combined and joined with what we call the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. Now, this is a federally funded task force. There's about 62 task forces nationwide. And all the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force do is they investigate technology facilitated crimes involving child exploitation. When they joined up at that time back in 2013, they still did a little bit of the monitoring sex offenders, and then we took on that ancillary duty of investigating internet crimes. Fast forward in 2020, I'm sure everybody in here knows what happened in 2020. COVID hit, and now everybody was online. And what we saw, to no one's surprise, is now an influx of our workload quadrupled overnight. And so
we had to really look at what we were going to do in terms of tackling the problem, because now we had literally every child across America in front of the keyboard on the internet doing homework, communicating with friends and family and whatnot, and now all of these online predators had access to them at their fingertips. And so when we rebranded in 2020, we took a three-pronged approach where we weren't going to stop doing the sex offender monitoring, we weren't going to stop the internet crimes, but we were actually going to start adding a component to it where we saw a nexus that people who tend to distribute and possess child pornography, that's typically what we deal with. There's been studies that show about 70 to 80% of them are contact offenders, meaning at some point in their life, when they were viewing child pornography, 7 out of 10 people, or 8 out of 10, depending on which study you're looking at, were actual hands-on offenders where victims never disclosed to law enforcement that they were actually a victim of sexual abuse. So in 2020, when we rebranded, we took what we call a victim-centered approach, which is what I just mentioned. We took on a lot more responsibility in dealing with what they call NCMEC cyber tips, and I'll explain what NCMEC is here in a second. We started doing a lot of proactive undercover, what we call peer-to-peer investigations. We did a lot of traveler investigations, which is proactive investigators going on the internet, posing as 12 or 13-year-old females or males, and then seeing who wants to meet us for sex, plain and simple. And then, again, we kept up with the 290, the sex registrant compliance component of it. And then we added two big resources that we didn't have before, which was our ESD canines. Some of you have told me as I walked in that you met Solo, or student Chewy, and Bubba. And so Chewy and Bubba were our first ESD canine team that was assigned to our team. They were one of the first electronic scent detection canine teams in California. Not jumping ahead in my PowerPoint slides, but the dogs are super great resources for us. Because of the type of investigations that we do, everything is technology facilitated, right? Everybody has a cell phone in their pocket, everybody has a tablet, everybody's got 1 or 2 computers at home, and everybody has 1 or 2 thumb drives on their keychain, like I do. And so, trying to find these types of devices in 3,000-4,000 square foot homes can be tedious, and that's where these dogs come in. And so, adding these dogs to our team back in 2020 became super helpful. And I'll show you here in a second the amount of investigation that we conduct yearly, that back in 22, the talk about adding a second ESD canine team, how that would prove beneficial, and obviously I'm here today, and so we know the outcome. We do a lot of public outreach and education, and then a lot of the charity and awareness events to get the word out on what's out there. I've kind of already touched on this, I'm not going to go through it. 14 full-time investigators, but being a part of this Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force brings a lot of federal funding to us, and so we have the ability to just tap into any of the federal resources that are available to agencies like the FBI, HSI, or the DEA, and that's been extremely helpful for us because at times, unfortunately, our court systems can put up roadblocks for us where our federal partners can easily plow through them, and so being able to just say, hey, FBI agent, can you send a subpoena over to Frontier Communications and get me subscriber information for this house because of this investigation I'm conducting? Within minutes, I'll have that information. So that's a nice resource that we have at our dispense. One of the, it's become a staple of our group. If any of you follow our Instagram by chance? Anybody know about our Instagram? All right, one hand. At the end of it, I better see like at least 50 new followers on my Instagram page. But if you follow our Instagram, you know about our van, our gray van that we use when we send out to houses. We usually take our what we call it, perp photos next to it. This is a photo of our van. Unfortunately, it's a bad one. But this is a Mercedes Sprinter van. I don't know what the length is, but it's one of the biggest Sprinter vans that they make. And this is essentially a police department on wheels. We have a full-on computer lab that has 2 actual desktops in there capable of doing full forensic downloads of computers. We have the capability of downloading cell phones in there if we need to. And then in the back, what you see there is a full-on interview room that has a bench seat for a bad guy, and then we have 2 captain seats for our investigators. And that whole area is actually audio and video recording capable, so we can actually do our interviews on scene and get whatever information we need without having to take someone back to a police department and waste any valuable time. I'll share with you here in a minute, and I apologize if I'm talking fast, I'm a little pressed for time, but this becomes useful to us because sometimes time is of the essence and we don't have a whole lot of time to go back and do the processing and necessary paperwork that you need to do. So NCMEC, anybody heard of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children? Okay, a couple heads. So NCMEC is, think of NCMEC as your national clearinghouse for law enforcement agencies across the U.S. NCMEC, so let me recite that for a second. For every electronic service provider that operates in the U.S., they're obligated under federal law to report anytime suspected or known child pornography comes across their servers, or anytime they believe that someone is being exploited or sextorted over one of their platforms. So an example is Discord, if you're familiar with Discord. If somebody is chatting on Discord and an image is sent over Discord, and that is a known child pornography image that's sent, automatically Discord will know about it. They'll eventually send a tip to NCMEC, and then NCMEC, through their process, will eventually filter that tip over to us. Another example is Verizon. If you use like any cloud services, so Verizon offers Synchronous, Dropbox, OneDrive, iCloud, all of those type of electronic service providers, they're all bound by the same laws. And so anytime they suspect any of that criteria comes across their servers, they're obligated under the law to notify us. And they don't notify law enforcement directly, again, they notify NCMEC. And that information that's given to NCMEC is very limited in scope. It's usually just an IP address, maybe subscriber information with like a telephone number or maybe a name, and then it's incumbent on us to do the workup to figure out who this person is, what they're actually possessing, and if it meets the criteria for a full-on investigation. And so the types of tips that come across with the investigations, we do reactive, which are the cyber tips. We do referrals from other internet crimes against children task forces throughout the U.S., which we, believe it or not, do a lot of. And then we do citizen complaints. So similar to how the FBI has a complaint form, or if anybody's ever heard of the NW3C, where you can report fraud, you can report suspected child abuse or child exploitation on NCMEC, and then those complaints ultimately get filtered over to us. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we do some of that proactive work where, we pose as teens or underage kids online, and we're just going about business like a normal teen would, and people are interacting with us for the purposes of trying to meet up at some point. So to give you an idea, these numbers are a little old, but it's because NCMEC has to tally them up. So the most current numbers that we have are from 2022. And in 2022, NCMEC received a total of 32 million cyber tip reports. Now that's nationwide, that's not including worldwide, that's just in the US. That was up 9% over 21, and I want to say the preliminary reports that we've got, it's up another like 10 or 12%. And like everything, the trend is up. Everything continues to go up. And so I've already kind of touched on this. The electronic service providers, they're legally mandated to report this stuff to us. And then these cyber tips, once they're generated, they get filtered out to the task forces so they can be investigated. So this report was actually taken from, usually it has the week on it. I think this was from last month. So 6,200 reports were made by the public last month, one of the weeks last month in July. And then about 628,000 tips of child pornography specific were received by NCMEC. And then they're broken down, if you can see the screen, child sex tourism, sex trafficking, molestation, misleading domain, and so forth. To give you an idea of what we receive here in Riverside County receives anywhere from about 5,000 to 7,000 cyber tips a year. And if you do the math, I think we're at roughly 4 million-ish in population for Riverside County. So it's quite a bit of cyber tips that we receive per investigator. I mentioned it earlier, we have about 14 of us full-time. And so when you break it down, it's quite a bit of cyber tips that each one of us has to handle. Unfortunately, and I'll be honest, we don't have the resources to handle every single tip, so we have to triage. And the criteria for triaging varies But there are, admittedly, sometimes some tips go under the radar because we have to deal with, person A who only possessed one photo where person B had 3,000 photos. And so it's a sad, unfortunate world that we live in, but we just don't have the manpower to handle every single cyber tip that comes across our desk. So we talked about why internet safety is so important. These slides might be a little small to see on this screen, but nowadays, kids as young as 4 years old, I've got a 22-year-old, I've got a 14-year-old, and I've got a 4-year-old. All from the same baby mama. All the same mom, promise. 4-year-old was kind of planned, but I digress. Anyway, so this study, are two different studies, the one on the left and the one on the right, show how many kids, as of I think it was 21 as well, because this was a large study that was put on, kids as young as 4 years old are on devices nowadays playing Roblox, watching YouTube Kids, on different platforms that are out there. And so what's scary about this is that now, I want to say it's almost as up to about 78% of kids. We saw it during COVID, that every school-age child was in front of a computer, and kids who never really had a computer now were forced to be in front of one. And so these numbers are staggering because, again, there's predators out there that now have essentially unlimited amounts of children that they can prey on. And if we're not carefully watching them, putting proper protections in place, or actually schooling them on proper internet etiquette, if you will, they're susceptible to being preyed on by these predators. So we talked about, what are some of the vectors that these predators use? Literally, it's everything. It's your social media accounts, the obvious ones, right? Kik, Snapchat, Twitter. It's an old picture, obviously, Twitter's X now. But you might think, okay, well, my kid doesn't have Twitter, my kid doesn't have Instagram, but I guarantee your kid is probably playing Roblox. And Roblox, we see, unfortunately, and I'm guilty of it too, my son, my 14-year-old, when he was younger, was playing Roblox as early as 6 years old. Now, I try to watch him as much as possible, but the truth is I can't be in front of him 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, watching over him. And so predators know that. They know that parents are busy. Some parents are just absent completely, and they give a device to a child, and they leave them in a room for, hours at end without really checking up on them. And I always ask this question when I present to groups like yourself: who here sleeps with their front door locked? Most everybody puts their hands up, right? So then why do we leave a telephone or a tablet or computer in a child's room overnight without checking up on it? Right? And I get heads, nodding and saying and agreeing, but the truth is that if we're locking our doors, we should have that same mentality with our children and trying to protect them, that we're trying to keep the bad guy from reaching them by removing those devices. Now, I'm not a proponent that we have to lock kids up, even though I do my kids sometimes. But, we have to be more conscious about what devices they have, who they're talking to, which games they're on, and the platforms that are available to them, because unfortunately, again, something as simple as, modern warfare, people think, oh, well, it's PlayStation, they're not, really talking to anybody. No, sadly, there is an online feature, they can chat, and a lot of these predators, what they do is they only meet the children on this platform, and then they get them to go off and take them to another platform, another chatting platform like Kik or Snapchat or Instagram. And it's sad because these kids most of the time fall for it. They think, oh, hey, this person is a boy or girl my age, they're really good at the game that I'm playing, and so, or they're offering me money to play with them sometimes, and unbeknownst to the child, it's a 40-year-old man that looks as ugly as I am on the other end. And so, they don't know that. I talked about this study. This is the Mayo Clinic. It was taken back in 2007, where they concluded that 76% of child pornography offenders with no prior documented history of hands-on sexual abuse admitted to having sexually abused children in the past. So how does that play a role for us? Remember I told you that NCMEC sends these cyber tips over about child pornography coming across servers? These people may have never been on anybody's radar. No law enforcement throughout the county really knew who this person is. Sadly, we've arrested prominent people in the community, doctors, firemen. We arrested about a month and a half ago a highly decorated CHP officer after 36 years. I'm embarrassed of it. But unfortunately, this type of crime, mental problem, however you want to categorize it, affects everybody. It's not just, the tweaker down the street or, the bad house that looks like crap. We hit $1 million homes in Anaheim Hills. We hit a business right across the street from Disneyland a few months back. And so it's unfortunate that these people that prey on kids come in all shapes and sizes. And it's not just males. I've arrested plenty of females as well. So a study called the Butler study, done about 2 years after that prior, the male study, showed that 85% of these people are actual hands-on offenders. And so if you think about it, when we're getting 6,000 tips a year, you're looking at potentially 4,000 to 5,000 people are actually hands-on offenders that we have no idea about. And so it's scary to think that. This is actually some screenshots of a gentleman here that I actually arrested. This was about because there's no way I was staying up past midnight any longer. But anyways, I go online at about 1:40 a.m. I just pose as a 13-year-old female, and within minutes, I get a text message here from Mr. Griffith asking me if I was really 13. I said yes. I kind of bantered with him, admirable work. The problem is that it hinders our investigation. Because they most of the time break the law to get these pedophiles to meet up with them. And obviously we're bound by different standards, and so we can't break the law. So these are the guys that actually want to meet a child. There's no denying when we meet or we set up a meet with some of these travelers, there's no denying what age I am. We are very clear and unequivocal that I am 12 years old or 13 years old. I'm either a boy or a girl, and I'm still living at home with whoever, whatever guardian, and they are okay with it. They still want me. And so most of the time, lucky for them, they're not meeting an actual child. They're meeting us, and they're greeted with a picture like this that you see at night with 5 or 6 big guys pointing guns at them and taking them into custody. We've had travelers come from all across the U.S. to meet with us, and some local, and we've had plenty here in Riverside. I know, obviously, this is a group full of Riverside residents. Everyone's familiar with the, oh gosh, why am I going to blank now? Of course. The Virginia State Trooper, I believe he was, that traveled all across Virginia and ultimately murdered a female's family. No different, right? Unfortunately, that was one that we had no idea about, and we can't catch them all. And so that's why it's important for us as a team to exist. I'll spare you this video because I'm kind of short on time, and I want to make sure that I get questions in the demonstration here going. But this is a video that I play to parents when I ask them if they know what grooming is. By show of hands, anybody know what grooming is, or the word grooming? Okay, a couple people. We show this to kids in middle school and in high school, and we get the same response that these two kids are talking about. One says, oh, it's when you cut the dog's hair. That's what grooming is. Unfortunately, a lot of the crimes that we investigate start off with grooming, where bad guy meets a child on a platform, be it Roblox, be it Modern Warfare, GTA, and then they befriend them somehow, some way, and ultimately at some point they start offering something in return. Most of the time it's monetary stuff. I just had a case last week where the suspect was actually sending physical items to the residents. The mom and dad had no idea about it. The 14-year-old girl had a brand new ring, a brand new iPhone 14, and parents had no idea that she actually had these items. I don't know about you, but an iPhone 14 is about $1,100 now. So how a 14-year-old has it, and why a parent isn't questioning why their child has a $1,100 phone is beyond me. So really quickly, some of the definitions, because a lot of people have questions about this. What is child pornography? And it's very plain and simple. Any matter or material that depicts sexual conduct or sexual activity of a person under the age of 18. And then matter or material is easily categorized as films, videos, pictures, or images. These are the actual penal codes that we typically use when it comes to the possession, distribution, and manufacturing of child pornography. I was talking to Brian earlier, and why I'm pressed for time is I don't normally share active cases, but this literally just happened about an hour and a half before I showed up here. We just got information of what we refer to as a live victim, where there was a 5-year-old sibling in a home that was being sexually abused by her brother, and it was just discovered today. So all my team is actually on the west end of the county right now, so I have to leave to go help them out. But this is the type of stuff that we deal with. We're basically on call 24 hours a day, and if we get what we refer to as a priority 1 case, we have to roll out and hopefully try to save the child. Our mission as a team is, yes, to put people behind bars, but at the end of the day, when we say we're a child or victim-centered approach into investigations, we go into these investigations acting or knowing, based off of the studies we know, that there is a child that's being abused, until we can disprove that there's no child in the home or that they don't have access to it. And so to date, as of 2020, our team has recovered, I think we're at about 79 children that had never prior or previously disclosed to law enforcement that they had been sexually abused until we showed up and we investigated. So that's something that we're really proud of. And potentially today, but we can say, our hope is that we can get to a child soon enough that the abuse, 1, stops, but 2, that child can get that process of recovery started so that they're not susceptible to a lifetime of trauma, but now they're, being encouraged to a lifetime of recovery and rehabilitation. So we're seeing a huge increase in sextortion lately, where again, people are going online, predators are going online, acting as, other either juveniles or same sex as their victims, and they're getting them to produce child pornography for them. Not to actually meet up, but just actually produce child pornography so that they can extort them later for either more images or for money. And so we're seeing a huge increase in it, and it's sad because most of these predators are actually overseas, and so it's a lot harder for us to prosecute them. But this is where our federal partners, come in handy, because we have HSI on our team. Some of us are FBI task force officers like myself. Some are actually cross-sworn through HSI. So if we need to fly somewhere, we can go at the moment's notice, just depending. But the problem is that because most of them are overseas and the crime is being committed over there, we're limited in prosecution resources and actually taking these people to jail. So again, why is internet safety so important? This is a small child out of Florida. She was 12 years old. She killed herself because she was cyberbullied. Now the article doesn't talk about it, but she was essentially sextorted and then ultimately bullied by some kids at school that led to her killing herself. Why I put this article in there though is because it is a crime. These 2 juveniles that were actually ultimately charged as adults are now having to pay the price. But it's sad. At the end of the day, we have one 12-year-old girl whose life was lost, was taken shortly. And now we have 2 other male juveniles who are now going to sit behind bars probably most of their adult life. And it's sad because I would venture to guess that there wasn't proper education there or some intervening on parents' part or school administrators' part. So now to the stars of the show. Chewy and Solo. They're both electronic scent detection dogs. What that means is that they are trained to smell out electronic devices capable of storing anything, literally anything. And so if you think of your Apple Watch, your cell phone, your tablet, a micro SD card, a computer hard drive, a portable drive, your Tesla that's parked, obviously it's a big car, but anything that can store digital media, these dogs can find. There's a chemical compound that's in the manufacturing process called TPPO. This is where my partner Joel comes in real handy because he's a science guy and a nerd geek and he explains this all. But anyways, it's a chemical that I just dumb down and I basically tell people it's essentially the radiator fluid in memory chips that prevents a memory chip from overheating. And it's that particular chemical that the dogs are trained to smell. And so a question was asked earlier before I came up, like how do the dogs know? Because it's a unique chemical, it's the only chemical that's actually used, at least to my knowledge, in the manufacturing of memory chips. So whether that memory chip is placed in an Apple Watch, in a phone, in a tablet, it doesn't matter to the dogs. I don't have to train them on a new device, it's always going to be on that memory chip during that manufacturing process. And so the dogs come in extremely handy and are valuable to us because if some of you are computer savvy, there's some micro SD cards that are no bigger than the size of a dime that I think the latest that I found was about 1.5 terabytes. You can store hours upon hours of videos and hundreds of thousands of images on one little device that's no bigger than a dime. And so if you now take that dime and put it in a 4,000 square foot house, you've got 14 investigators who are now angry and upset because we had to wake up really early to go circle more in the house, and we're tearing up the house. We can easily overlook it. These are where the dogs come in handy. Similar to how a narcotics dog detects and alerts on narcotics or firearms or arson, these dogs work the same way on electronics. So we send them into a house, they go in and they search, and they cut down the search, tenfold for us sometimes. Most recently, I'd like to take credit for this, but it wasn't us, it was actually Chewy and Bubba. But we were actually here in Riverside a few months back where we knew going into the house that the device that we were looking for in particular was a cell phone, and we had already been searching for almost 2.5 hours in the house. And then one investigator was like, hey, don't we have a dog that can find the phone? And so Bubba took his dog out. I wasn't there, otherwise I would have told Bubba a lot sooner. But they took Chewy out, and they actually sent him out in the backyard, and within about 6 minutes, Chewy was able to narrow down on a big field, because it was in the hills, a cell phone that was buried in some of the foliage and the ivy that was there in the backyard. And we would have never searched that there, ever. Just because, you're talking about a 15,000 square foot lot, so you can only imagine how big that hill was, and we would have never even guessed to look there. Bubba sent the dog in and was able to actually narrow it down within, like I said, 4 to 5 minutes. And then once he got on it, this is the difference between Chewy and Solo, is Chewy wants to actually eat the device, but won't, and he'll dig at it. Solo won't, he'll actually sit. And so, as soon as Bubba actually saw him digging, he knew, okay, well there's odor there, and he found the actual cell phone that we were looking for. So the dogs become invaluable. Before I conclude, this is the nice thing about the dogs. As taxpayers, as myself, being a taxpayer of Riverside County, these dogs cost the county absolutely nothing. An organization called Operation Underground Railroad actually funded both dogs. They basically gave us a full scholarship. So they bought the dog, which is about $15,000 to $20,000 for the dog. They paid for both Bubba and I to fly back to Indiana for the training. They paid for our food, the airfare, everything. And then on a monthly basis, they actually pay for their care and maintenance. And so OUR, I know they've gotten a little heat lately because of their founder, but they're a great organization that their sole mission is to fight child exploitation and sex trafficking. And so they actually deploy and pay for a lot of these dogs. I think to date, they're at about 100 dogs worldwide. They have 80 or so or 90 or so in the U.S., and then they have about 10 deployed in the Philippines, Costa Rica. They were talking about putting one in like the Bahamas, which I offered to go train. And I was like, oh, need a trainer over there. But anyways, I talked about the devices. This is the chance to actually add. The demo will come last, but I need everybody to add. So if you actually have, or on Instagram, you can scan these QR codes. And these QR codes will take you to each page, both Chewy's and Solo's. We are probably one of the only teams in California that stays very active, updating our arrest, because we're big proponents that the word needs to get out, that this is an epidemic. Just like fentanyl is, just like, drugs before that came. The crime of possessing or being interested in children is unfortunately a growing trend that we're seeing. And we like to basically publish the type of work that we do, and so we stay very active in updating our pages with all the arrests that we make. I think I said it earlier, we're one of the busier teams in California, if not in the US. We average about 150 arrests a year, which I think the next closest is LAPD, which averages about 75, and LAPD is about 5 times as big as us. Now granted, they only have 6 dedicated investigators to their team, where Mike Eshron, our DA, is very big on this particular issue and has given us enough money to fund it the way we have it. But even then, like I mentioned earlier, we still don't have the amount of resources that we need to investigate every single cyber tip that comes across our desk. And I wish that was the case, but it's not. So with that, I set up some devices over here. I don't think he understands English, so he doesn't know where I actually put them. But I set up some devices over here. If you guys want to stand up and maybe see it, I didn't really know how the room should be set up prior to setting the devices up. But I'll take him, and what you'll notice is when I take him around, I'm going to give him the search command. He's going to start looking. And in a room like this, there's odor everywhere. Everybody has a cell phone in their pocket, in their hand. There's a computer in front of me. There's cameras up here recording. And so people ask, hey, well, how does the dog know? Well, the dog knows because I'm telling him where to search. If I just sent him at that front door and said, hey, go find odor, he'll find it for me and he'll come to the first odor that he finds. But when I send him on directed searches of a particular object, and I'm giving him like hand commands of, hey, search here, search here, search here, that's where he knows to focus in that particular area and is not wandering off, or at least that's the hope. I'm not embarrassed yet. Any questions so far before I turn the mic over and do the demo? I guess I could probably answer questions after if you like.
Okay, hold on to your cell phones. So might want to take one home.
I'll let him actually. There's a cell phone right here.
Yeah.
Now, I know you find something that I actually want, I would bring it, if they're all on food for. So I'll give him one other one here.
If they want to get fed, our cell phone and hard drives.
See, now he's looking at it. No. There's another cell phone here. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Can you do it one more time? That over here. You couldn't hear or see anything. You didn't hear
I'll tell you what,
anything.
somebody put their phone under a chair somewhere and I'll
Okay.
just tell me the area I need to search. What was your question?
The dog is very expensive.
Yes, very expensive.
It's very rare for dogs.
So not like traditional narcotics dogs or the arson dogs, because the odor's so finite, they need to be able to pick it up pretty early. And so our trainer in particular, he repurposes dogs that were actually once bred for social dogs or for PTSD dogs that ultimately fail out. Once he tests them to see if they can pick up the odor, that's when we'll use them. And when he does the testing, not every single one passes. So only the ones that are actually able to pick up that odor are the ones that he ends up reusing.
Very rare.
Correct.
Find a dog.
Yep.
That's what it is.
Yes.
But not every dog qualifies.
Yes.
They can't all pick up the scent.
All right, I'll come over here. There's going to be a lot of scents for him to look for. That's right. Is everybody comfortable with dogs that are left off street? He's not going to jump on anybody. If you're not comfortable, tell me. I'll just let him find what he finds. If you have a phone on the table, I'm sure he's going to look for it. I don't want to jump in next Yes, always. Any other questions?
Let's give Solo and Jason a big hand.
Oh, just straight Kurt and kibble, that's all it is. Nothing special. It's just, yeah,
Oh, very cool.
that's it.
So does it make a difference if his leash is on the front or back?
So I use a pitch collar because believe it or not, he wants to eat everything. But when we're working and searching, I put him on the regular neck collar.
Right, so is there a difference if you're walking in the front versus walking on that?
No.
Yeah, so he could be working and either.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no,
He did a really good job.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
No problem, thank you.
You know he has to go, he's got a
Yes.
place to work on. Put Solo to work. He was saying, in case a lot of you couldn't hear it, is that not all the dogs qualify. And a lot of these are reject dogs for PCSD or for social or something else. And then they get tested to see if they have the ability to smell this chemical. And not all of them pass, that's why it's so expensive. So, okay, I'm gonna give you a quick update on the Kmart apartments. So the EIR report on the 24th, they received over 200 email letters from, most of them from us, with about 1,000 questions or comments. There was a planning commission meeting that kind of surprised us on July 18th. We asked the planning department to notify us if anything came up on this project, and they promised us we would. And then one of our own members, Laura Sandich, was alerted that, hey, this is coming up in the planning commission in like 3 or 4 days. And so we frantically ran around to see what was on the agenda and to be able to go down and respond. So there was about 10 or so of us that went down there and spoke at the meeting. And I have to tell you, the planning commission meeting was pretty sad. They had 9 people on the commission. They basically had like 900 pages of stuff to review for the apartment complex with the EIR, and the planning department gave a very brief, and I mean brief, skeleton level report that just said, well, it's 347 apartments and it meets this thing, and the EIR is here, and we got 4 letters, and one of the letters was from the Indian tribe, and they said we misspelled their name 4 times. And then there was a couple other letters, and then, oh, by the way, there was another 220 letters also. And we're going to respond to all those before we do the final EIR, but we want you, the planning commission, to approve the draft. And so the question came up, a couple of members asked questions, and then one of them said, we got up and all spoke, and then he said, you know, I've been doing this for a long time, I've never seen a group like this show up for one of these meetings on one of ours. We hardly get anybody that shows up. I want to know what's going on here. And so he asked the representative of the developer, did you guys have meetings? And he said, oh yeah, we had meetings, several meetings with the public, and some of them liked it and some of them didn't. But what they didn't ask the developer was, did you volunteer to change anything? But the answer to that is no. Nobody volunteered to change anything. So anyway, the result of that was they passed the planning commission, and I spoke and I said, look, and the excuse from the planning department was, well, we didn't tell you about this meeting because it's no big deal. It's just the planning commission, and surely the city council that counts. They're the ones that are going to vote on it. But I said at the meeting, I said, yeah, but you're going to go to the city council and say, we want you to pass this because the planning commission passed it. Right? And so we complained about that, at that thing. So now, the city council has on their consent calendar for September 17th to basically pick a date in December for public comment. So we're trying to get one of the city council members to hit that off the consent calendar so that we can speak at that meeting as well as in December on this. And basically our goal is to have some large turnouts. There was 500 people turned out for the R Now thing, for the March 8th meeting. We need like 150, 200 people to cram the city council meeting chambers and just speak all night long if we have to about this project, because there's some new things that have come up with this. And I spoke to it at that planning commission meeting, that the ER was wrong. They said in there that they're going to include parking spaces with the apartments, which is typical, right? You get a parking space. Well, no more. AB 1317 was passed in 2023, and any new apartment complex that gives a certificate of completion after January 2025 and 16 units or more, you cannot include parking with the fee for the apartment. You have to charge extra. And they can decide to opt out. So the tenant can opt out of the parking, decide not to pay parking, and park out on the street. So guess what's going to happen with the Kmart? They're already planning on sharing 91 parking spaces with the shopping center, and now the tenants are going to be able to opt out. They can't park in the street, so guess where they're going to park? In the shopping center. So, and also about that, California changed their occupancy limits, where now you can put 6 people in a 1-bedroom. And then you can add 2 people for every, what is it, Brian, 70? Every 70 square feet above that, you can add another 2 people. So, just based on that, you could end up with 800 or 900 cars for that apartment complex, and most of those would be filling the shopping center, and we wouldn't be able to get to the retail stores, and wouldn't find places to park. So, the city council, in order to approve this project, has to override their own general plan, the specific plan. They have to vote to change the zoning, which is mixed-use urban, which the project is not mixed use. It's simply an apartment building, and it's not urban. We are in a suburban area. We are not in an urban area, and I really have a problem with them claiming all the time they're trying to urbanize. We don't need to be urbanized. We don't need high-density apartments and so on in a suburban area. That's what Los Angeles did, and that's why a lot of people moved out here. It's because they didn't want that high density where it was never planned to be. So between that and the unbundled parking, this project is a real problem. So here's the map of the project. You can see where the parking was already going to be earmarked in this area for the 91 parking spaces, but they could end up easily with another 200 or 300 more, which would basically take up the rest of the lot over to Stater Brothers and everything to the north with the car wash and over to IHOP. Basically fill that whole area with parking, because there's no parking on Mission Grove or Mission Village Drive. Here's another picture of the spot where the parking, they end up parking way over here, because if I was renting in it, why would I pay extra for parking when I got a whole parking lot? So the result of all this is we could end up like this. This is the university shopping center where they have the same problem with an apartment complex nearby filling up, and they ended up having to put up gates, and now you have to get a receipt from the retailer or whatever in order to get in and out to do shopping. So our next steps is to submit a full report to the city council and the senior staff summarizing this project and its issues. We're going to contact the airport commission to see what steps they're going to take next, because they have to override the airport commission that didn't want 35 units per acre. They only will accept 6, and the highest there's ever been in this area is 16. So they're more than doubling that. And then we're going to meet with the planning department and attend all the city meetings related to this project in force, and basically show that we don't want it. So, with that, any quick questions on it?
What is the general feeling of all this? Does everybody think this is going to go through or not?
I'll tell you the general feeling from our city council member and from the developer and from everything is it's a done deal. It's a done deal because the city needs its arena numbers. And the arena numbers are set by the state where they come in and say you have to produce so much housing by 2029 and you've got to hit these goals. And so they're trying to just put housing and apartments, any vacant lot, any place they can find to rezone it. They're trying to do it. We mentioned it a couple of months ago up at Wood in Van Buren. There's another project proposed there right across from Ace Hardware in that 2-acre lot next to the used car lot. 35 units per acre, 65 units in 2 acres. And guess where they're going to be parked?
And what about traffic?
Oh, well, they talk about in the EIR that traffic is going to be a problem and they can't mitigate it, but they can't mitigate it, and so it's just,
Remember the first developer said they're gonna synchronize the lights at Mission Grove and,
Synchronize the lights, yeah.
And the communication center, and then our traffic line, and then all the traffic will be fine.
right, well, they had a VMT test which had failed, and they said they can't mitigate the VMT.
Use that.
All right, we'll try again. So, yeah, they don't know how to mitigate that, so the traffic's gonna be huge. They claim that there'll be no more traffic than what there was with Kmart, but when we asked the last 5 years, Kmart hasn't been there, and they averaged that into the average, those 5 years when there was nothing there, to equal the apartments. Yeah.
I have a question about the logistics of the planning commission meeting. It seemed like we could have 3 minutes per person, and that's all we could do, and then they stop any outside discussion, and then they just discuss. Is there a change that can be made at all with either the planning commission or the city council? Or still an open discussion?
Yeah, he's asking that, is there any change we can make with the city council? Because the city council meetings are basically, you have 3 minutes to speak. They don't have to answer you, they don't have to answer your questions, they don't really have to acknowledge you, and then they can just discuss it on their own and vote on it. That's one reason why we're gonna send a full report to all of them, to show them exactly what the issues are and what's going on, and what they're doing it. And I challenged them at the planning commission meeting, I said, what does it take for a project to be rejected if you have to do all these overrides of all your planning, your specific plan, your general plan, you gotta override everything. When does the project fail? When is it, there's so much no's that you say no? And I could never get an answer to that. But we're gonna go after each city council member individually and write reports to them. And so if they're gonna approve this, they're gonna do it, and then we'll move to our next options, which will be referendums or initiatives or recalls. That's all we have that we can do. Question that.
Two statements. One, please keep in mind, this is not a 3-story building.
This is not a what?
Not a 3-story building.
Louder!
This is not a 3-story building. 0 is not a counting number. 1, 2, 3. The ground floor is 0. 1, 2, 3. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 stories. It's going to be the tallest building in the area. Suggestion I have, Stater Brothers is the largest leasing or tenant in that area. We should have a conversation with the Stater Brothers real estate department and point that out to what's going to happen to their parking and what's going to happen to their customers.
Right. Yeah, we want to get a hold of all the businesses and let them know, especially about the AB 1317 with the parking issue. I think that is a big issue. The fact that it's unbundled parking, and Sacramento passed that because they claimed that too many people didn't have cars and were actually paying for parking in their rent, and they were being ripped off. Well, I looked it up for the city of Riverside. We have about 5% of the people that travel to work that don't use a car, and most of them are congested in the downtown area or around the university. So you're talking about a very minutiae amount of people, and nobody up here where we are is not going to have a car. There'll be very few people that will not have a car. So the only way you can include parking is if the parking is attached to the unit, like a townhouse.
A good estimate is when you drive down Mission Grove and you see the palm trees over by the Kmart. The building's gonna be about 1.5 times the size of that palm tree. And it's gonna go from the entrance by the car wash all the way to the street, what's it called, Mission Village.
Well, it'll be 50 feet tall.
Yes, 50 feet tall. Yeah, there's a picture.
Plus the roof.
Right.
So big.
That's a good, that's it. If you're driving by, look at the palm trees, and then you'll, well, it's gonna be that X amount taller. And everyone says, well, it's gonna be, yeah, but it's gonna be a solid wall. I mean, the people that live on the other side of Mission Village, the people on the 4th floor are gonna be looking in their backyards.
And I personally have been involved in housing and real estate for 40 years. I'm a licensed appraiser, I'm a real estate agent, I've worked all over the world on stuff, on affordable housing projects and all this stuff. One of the other big problems is, once you take commercial zoning and turn it into residential, you never go back. You lose that commercial forever. So if you end up with a population increase and you need that commercial area to support them, you've lost it, it's gone. And this is just dropping an apartment building in the middle of a suburban, shopping center that's a typical shopping center and basically going to ruin it. You won't be able to get in and get traffic anymore, and we'll end up with the crossing gates like University and fighting over parking. So that's why we've got to set up and fight this. We'll keep you informed in it and let you know when we need to turn out. And so we need to get everybody to turn out to the city council meetings when it happens.
You said the general feeling is this will pass.
The general feeling from the city council members in the city and the planning.
Because I don't think anybody wants it.
No, none of the people want it. They're like,
money. Chuck Connor wants it.
yeah, Chuck said it was a done deal before we even knew about it.
Yeah.
That's what he said about the
That's why
warehouse.
it's important when they have a meeting, even if it's a small meeting, we need a lot of people down there. I mean, the planning department said, we've never seen this many people at one of our meetings. So when the city council goes to vote to override something, we need to fill the chamber and we need to talk. And not everyone has to talk.
What is this state law that's mandated a quota on the number of living units? Apartments, homes?
You mean the RENA numbers?
Yes.
Well, the RENA numbers are established by a state committee that decides for each area, depending on the size of the city, how many new units you have to produce by a certain length of time in order to fulfill the housing needs, because we're lacking, housing. So I don't know where they came up with those numbers. My own calculations show that our population is growing about 4,000 or so per year, maybe 5,000. But if we add 20,000 new units in 5 years, that'll be 60,000 people at 3 people per unit average, which is what Riverside is. So we're liable to overbuild ourselves and end up with too many. I have a real issue with building all apartments. If you're going to get people into housing, you get them into housing they can buy. You get them to become buyers and become owners. That's the projects I've worked on for years.
Right in the neighborhood.
You build condos, you build that stuff, you get them in. And the price of a condo in Riverside, there's only about 25 or 30 condos for sale. There's 700 homes for sale. And if you look at the condo prices, you can buy a condo for $2,500 a month payment, the same as you're going to pay for rent. So that gets you into the housing market. But they don't seem to be interested in doing that. They want to build apartments because some of them will be earmarked for low income and get subsidized. Now this one will not. This one is not a low income. There's no unit subsidized, but the builders get special compensation if they add low income units. They get special repercussions and things in it and allocations and so on. It gets very complicated.
Now, the original builder said it was not, low income was not Section 8 housing.
No,
Is
it's
that
not.
Section 8 now?
No. It's
Low income meaning like how much?
low income is different than Section 8.
I know that, but
These are none of them.
These are none of that.
what does low income mean over there? They were talking about a 2-bedroom apartment being $3,000.
It's gonna be like 22 or 25.
That's for low income?
Well, no, that's just what the apartments are gonna cost. That's
But
what
they're mostly studios or more bedrooms.
The other thing is the mix, about 180 of them are studios and 1 bedrooms. There's only 10 3-bedrooms, and there's a big demand for 3 bedrooms. The only project that has 3 bedrooms is the one across the street on Alessandra at Mission Grove. They only have 10 units out of 400, and they told us they have a waiting list of people for the 3 bedrooms because families want it. There are no other major newer projects here or down in Sycamore Canyon that offer 3 bedrooms. So the mix is not what I think is appropriate either, but we're going to address that when we write our comments. So I don't want to take up any more time, but we're going to address this yet.
The new apartments they just built down on Session, is that low income? Low income senior.
Low income senior.
Senior and veterans.
Yeah, that's senior and veterans down there. for that.
Low income.
Okay, we're going to move on, but we'll keep you updated on this, so watch the emails. If we need you to respond to something, please respond, because it's necessary. Okay, so we got Michelle Sheehy here to talk about sober living homes. She's a longtime resident of Riverside. She's a former actress. And she saves cats, and she saved a cat from Taipei. They got all the way to the United States and was chipped and couldn't find the owner and helped to find it, so, Michelle.
Unfortunately, I'm probably going to depress you more.
Good luck with that.
Okay? I want to thank you for having me here today. I want to thank you today for having me here to give a presentation on sober living and residential treatment houses being placed in neighborhoods. I will define for you sober living houses and residential treatment houses. Sober living houses are not regulated or licensed. They can be in any neighborhood. Sober living houses are alcohol and drug-free living environments for individuals attempting to maintain abstinence from alcohol and drugs. They fall under the protection of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Recovering drug and alcohol addicts are considered disabled under the state and federal law as long as they are not currently abusing drugs or alcohol. These houses are protected by the Fair Housing Act. They also are exempt from CC&Rs and homeowner association rules. The only regulation these houses are required to meet are the health and safety regulations of the city code. Therefore, they are given superior rights to the rights of the average homeowner. If you buy in a neighborhood that has regulations, you agree to meet those regulations or be cited or fined. They do not apply to sober living because of the ADA and the Fair Housing Act. Residential treatment facilities are required to be licensed. They require 24-hour supervision in a non-hospital setting. They are regulated by the Department of Social Services. They are lucrative private businesses operating in neighborhoods. They are often covered by insurance and private funding for the residents. These programs can be between $34,000 and $36,000 per resident for a 4 to 6 week program. These programs target high-value neighborhoods. Currently, I know of 3 within a half a mile of my home being run by Muirwood Adolescent Teen Treatment. The city of Riverside is allowing a saturation of sober living and residential treatment houses in our neighborhoods. These are lucrative businesses being operated in neighborhoods. In the case of residential treatment, they have food services, medical services, staff, and visitors coming and going at all hours of the day and night. All of our city officials are aware of this growing problem and so far have refused to take any protective action. The answers we have been given is to watch the houses and report any code violations. They state that there is nothing to be done because of the ADA and the Fair Housing Act. The taxpayer is also being burdened by the cost of city services. Sober living and residential treatment houses are requiring services due to constant disturbances. We have 3 PH wellness houses within a quarter mile of my home. The police and the fire department are continually being called, requiring services for drug overdoses and altercations between residents require intervention by the police. The question we need to be asking is what can be done regarding this issue? The answer is our elected officials and city managers need to be working to change this situation. Our neighborhoods are being destroyed. Our safety is at risk by filling our neighborhoods with drug addicts, sexual offenders, alcoholics, and mentally ill people. Our property values are negatively affected by sober living and residential treatment houses. Other cities have formed organizations to require regulations be placed on sober living and residential. To protect neighborhoods and citizens, Riverside must become active to protect our neighborhoods. This issue is only going to become worse with the passing of Proposition 1. Our tax money is being used to victimize us. We will be told these are federal regulations and locally we have no power to change these laws. That is unacceptable. We cannot sit by and just let this destroy our city. The first thing that needs to change is the classification of drug addicts and alcoholics being classified as disabled. It should be a separate classification. There are many addictions people suffer from, such as addictions to food, shopping, gambling, pornography, and sex. Are we going to classify people who suffer from these addictions disabled? I do not understand the logic behind the fact that the government states you are considered disabled as long as you are not using drugs or alcohol. If you are lucky and you remain off drugs and alcohol for the rest of your life, are you considered a disabled person? The logic behind this needs to be reviewed. Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family knowingly addicted thousands of Americans to painkillers. They became billionaires, they ruined lives, and left society with the problem. Instead of accountability in pharmaceutical companies, cities are transferring the cost to taxpayers. Our neighborhoods are being destroyed and our safety is at risk with sober living and residential treatment being placed in our communities. Second, unrelated adults should not be classified as a family to meet the 6-resident limit in housing. There are plenty of empty commercial buildings in Riverside, and the city could develop these properties into small treatment centers. They could apply for federal and state funding, which would be available under Proposition 1 that passed in the last election. The residents of the treatment centers would have better access to jobs and public transportation. The latest executive order by the governor to evacuate the homeless from the streets is going to exacerbate the problem, and we as a community must find a solution. It's the responsibility of our elected officials to serve our community and solve our problems. Rather than remaining inactive on this issue, the city should form a task force to address the problem. Many other cities have taken action. The task force should be made up of Riverside residents, elected officials, law enforcement, health services, and social service programs. This would be a start in taking our community back. Elected officials should serve their community that elected them and be a partner in solving the critical issue affecting our community. Thank you. And if anybody has any questions.
And where are you living where you have 3 of these silver living houses around you?
I have more than 3. I have 9 within a mile and a quarter of my house. I live in the Greenbelt. And that's another thing. I'm an avocado farmer, and before it was always for agriculture. Well, the rules supersede that with the ADA and the sober living.
Those were 5-acre properties, right?
Some are. Some aren't. After I think it was in the late 70s, early 80s, that's when they made the 5-acre rule because they were destroying the groves.
So they changed all that?
At one point, they amended it, and what they're trying to do, I mean, that's part of the reason I think they're putting them all there, because people will sell, they'll move out, will no longer have a green belt.
You can put like 25, 30 people in one of these houses.
Yeah. You read on the thing you put up that 6 people to 1 bedroom.
Yeah.
And these are, don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm not against helping drug addicts and alcoholics, but they do not belong in neighborhoods. They do not, I sent you that thing about the guy that just killed the guy, and another one, there was a stabbing of a child. You know, these are not people you want in your, they are not neighbors. Let's face it, what is a neighbor? A neighbor is a person that interacts with the community, it helps you find your lost dog, watches your house. These people are not neighbors. They are investors in many cases, like the Muirwood Teen Treatment. They've got 3 on the other side in a very expensive neighborhood. It was in the newspaper in October 2023 of one of the ladies that was so upset on the Vinci. And of course, she was told there's nothing to do. Real estate people don't divulge that that's who's buying the house. The buyer does not have to reveal it either unless they're directly asked.
And they pay a lot more for the houses. The house will be listed for $800,000 and they might pay $1.2 million.
They'll pay sticker price with no inspections. And what they do is drive the prices up and drive the little guy out who couldn't try to buy a house. And then if it's not the high end, then it's the sober living buying.
So some of these are managed very well. They got very good managers who didn't even know they were in there. They don't, cram them with 25 or 30 people in a 4-bedroom place. They manage them well, but others do not. And the problem is, there's no registration that they have to do so that communities and cities can know where they are.
Yeah, we have no idea how many.
And know whether there's 5 on one street and then none for half a mile and then 10 on the street and then none for 2 blocks or whatever. So,
I found 9 by my own detective work. So,
question over here.
I just want everybody to be aware of this because this is going to destroy our community. And if you like living here, it's going to be a disaster. And crime is, and I've been working on this for 2 years. I've had meetings at my house, I've gone to meetings, and not one single thing has been done. It's always, we can do nothing. And Tucano said, at Tucano's meeting, one of the ladies there said they target more rural areas or where houses are farther apart, especially with the expensive ones, because then they can, nobody knows what's going on as much.
There's a question over here.
Do the businesses like Muirwood and Thomas, do they get a business license for one property or for each property?
The Muirwood Treatment, they're a facility out of Petaluma, and they would have to have licenses. Sober living, as far as I've been able to uncover, needs no licensing and no regulation and no inspectors. And that's why they tell you, if you don't like it in your neighborhood, call code enforcement, and if we get enough violations of code, then we can do something about it.
So we wanted to bring this to you. It's another issue that's come up. Like she said, a lot of people are not against helping these people recover, but you kind of need to, you can't have it just hither wherever you want to move in and then you don't even know they're there and you don't know what's going on until something happens. So.
And in commercial areas, they have a lot more access to public transportation, to stores, to jobs. So I heard that the county is doing that. The county has decided that they're going to make some outside facilities that will be.
People individually and share what you've got. So let's give her a big hand for coming out. Okay. Any other questions, comments before we wrap it up? We're constantly going to meetings and trying to meet with other community groups to get them organized so that we can set up a coalition of communities. So we're going to keep you posted on what we're doing and what's going on as we go through that. But we were in meetings today. We were at a meeting yesterday morning again with the city council and today with the commission. And so it's just nonstop. We're getting tips on what's going on because it's never ending trying to keep up with them.
So we got problems and we're sick.
Yes.
Remember the movie?
I would say that we got problems. But, it doesn't mean we give up on this. We're the ones that are ultimately in charge. They all work for us. And even though they might forget that, we've got to make sure they don't forget that.
They do forget that.
And we got to make sure that we step up and start, we're the boss. And we've got to step up and show that we are and do that. So, appreciate it. We got, Jessica.
Yes. Hello, good evening, Jessica Catali. I just wanted to let everybody know that the Riverside Neighborhood Partnership is going to have the 12th annual RMP Awards Dinner on September 26th. And the tickets are free to attend. But most importantly, what we're trying to do is really get everybody to nominate their good neighbors. And so they can win awards, and hopefully we can encourage everybody to, make a difference in the community. So if you do know of somebody in your neighborhood in Riverside that is making a difference and you want to give an opportunity to win an award, the nominations, I think it's September 8th. So please nominate your neighbors and thank you.
And it's gonna be local, I believe, right? If it's at the Masonic Lodge. Pete?
Thank you. Just a couple of comments based on my observations from this evening. It seems to me that when communities get together and talk and approach council for their suggestions and recommendations, the community loses quite often. Whether it's the RTRP project, sober living, apartments, etc., we keep losing. We're coming on. So anyway, here's what I would suggest for your consideration. That is our city's boards and commissions. I know the city is in the process of doing a facelift for how these groups work. Their powers, their makeup, and how they conduct business. You just said earlier that somebody from staff said, oh, that's just the planning commission. They don't mean anything. And that's not true. But what I see is happening that needs to change is the strength of commission members. They need, and I would suggest that in the future, commissioners gather in a venue such as this, just to talk amongst themselves on how they can take the bull by the horn and do what commissions are supposed to do, and that's to provide solid recommendations to our government officials that sometimes change over time. And until that happens, staff is going to look at commissioners as their weakness, and that they just show up, volunteer their time for a few hours, bless all the city's reports, that ultimately go to council. To me, that has to change.
Yeah. Good point, Pete.
There's quite a few openings on the commissions.
Right.
There's the ethics board, the police review board, the budget committee. I think there's 4 or 5 openings for Ward 2 and Ward 4 that people can apply for.
Yeah, so if anybody's interested in any of those commissions, let us know, so we can refer you to sign up and do that, because we need to get people on those commissions that are actually going to challenge the staff as to how things work.
I just wanted to know what we can recommend the neighbors for reserves with 70. There's no one more participant in the work than Louis and Brian. They have put these together. I've been working at it for a long, long time, and it's because of them that we are coming here to these meetings, and so I definitely want to make sure that we nominate them.
Thank you. Okay, thanks for coming. Watch your email for stuff that's coming out. There's going to be urgent things coming in the next couple of weeks. We've got the March APA again coming up, and of course the Kmart apartment is still going, and we're going to keep hiring them. The flyers are up here for the police Citizens Academy. Help yourself to one.
One is quick comment is fire canopies. So if you want, it's the fire academy is 7 weeks, 1 night a week. If you want to learn how to put out fires,
for all your hard work.